Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane. It's becoming a holy place of pilgrimage because all these saintly persons are coming into this room to hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the glories of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the philosophy, the real philosophy of life. So we're very fortunate to be here with all of them and all of you. We're going to, without further ado, we're going to right into it. We're going to read this beautiful prayer and deep prayer that we should meditate on each day so that we can know what we're reading when we read the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sanatana Goswami's glorification of Srimad-Bhagavatam, called Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. Sarva Shastrabdi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Go to the dining room and get the chair on that side and bring it for Sarva. Oh, anyway, bring it anyway because we'll need it. Put it right. What happened to that chair?
I saw it there, the green one.
Where?
In dining room.
This one that was here, the fancy one.
There was one green, that green and white. This is the one.
I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, this is what.
Oh, you're sitting in it. Got it.
That one.
Yeah. And put this over here. And then anyway, even if, you can sit in it if you want. We'll have an extra chair. We need a couple extra chairs. There's one more chair over there. Okay. Yeah, you need to take care of your back. Okay. I got this chair to take care of my back. I know all about it. And it works. Okay, back to Sanatana Goswami's prayer. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Mad Mahadana Madnistadaga Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chuchata kara hanamuncha gadachin mam premnarit gantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we have reached the 7th chapter of the second canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And this is a very nice chapter because we've heard a lot about philosophy, we've heard about the universal form, we've heard the history leading up to Shukadeva Goswami appearing in the place where Maharaj Parikshit was preparing to leave this world, Emperor of the world. And now we're going to hear about the personal appearances of Krishna's expansions and incarnations. Chapter 7, scheduled incarnations with specific functions. Text 1. Lord Brahma said, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime, just to lift the planet Earth, which was drowned in the great ocean of the universe called the Garbhodaka, the first demon, Hiranyaksha, appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. Purport. Since the beginning of creation, the demons and the demigods, or the Vaishnavas, are always the two classes of living beings to dominate the planets of the universes. Lord Brahma is the first demigod, and Hiranyaksha is the first demon in the universe. Only under certain conditions do the planets float as weightless balls in the air. As soon as these conditions are disturbed, the planets may fall down into the Garbhodak ocean, which covers half the universe. The other half is the spherical dome within which the innumerable planetary systems exist. The floating of the planets in the weightless air is due to the inner constitution of the globes, and the modernized drilling of the earth to exploit oil from within is a sort of disturbance by the modern demons and can result in a greatly harmful reaction to the floating condition of the earth. A similar disturbance was created formerly by the demons headed by Hiranyaksha. Hare Krishna, Doctor. Haribol. And the earth was detached from its weightless condition and fell down into the Garbhodak ocean. The Lord, as maintainer of the whole creation of the material world, therefore assumed the gigantic form of a boar with a proportionate snout and picked up the earth from within the water of Garbhodak. Sri Jayadev Goswami, the great Vaishnava poet, sang as follows: Vasati darsha chikade darani davad lagna Shishini kalanka galeva nimagna Kesava Drita Sukkara Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. O Kesava, O Supreme Lord, who have assumed the form of a boar, O Lord, the planet Earth rested on your tusks, and it appeared like the moon, engraved with spots. Such is the symptom of an incarnation of the Lord. The incarnation of the Lord is not the concocted idea of fanciful men who create an incarnation out of imagination. The incarnation of the Lord appears under certain extraordinary circumstances, like the above-mentioned occasion. And the incarnation performs a task which is not even imaginable by the tiny brain of mankind. The modern creators of the many cheap incarnations may take note of the factual incarnation of God as the gigantic boar with a suitable snout to carry the planet Earth. When the Lord appeared in order to pick up the earth, the demon of the name Hiranyaksha tried to create a disturbance in the methodical functions of the Lord, and therefore he was killed by being pierced by the Lord's tusk. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the demon Hiranyaksha was killed by the hand of the Lord. Therefore his version is that after being killed by the hand of the Lord, the demon was pierced by the tusk. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms this version. Text 2. Prajapati Ruchi begot Suyagya in the womb of his wife Akuti, and then Suyagya begot the demigods, headed by Suyama, in the womb of his wife Dakshina. Suyagya, as the Indradeva, diminished very great miseries in the three planetary systems, upper, lower, and intermediate. Because he so diminished the miseries of the universe, he was later called Hari by the great father of mankind, namely Swayambhuva Manu. Purport. In order to guard against the invention of unauthorized incarnations of God by the fanciful, less intelligent persons, the name of the father of the bona fide incarnation is also mentioned in the authorized revealed scriptures. Incarnation of the Lord, if his father's name, as well as the name of the village or place in which he appears, is not mentioned by the authorized scriptures. In the Bhagavad Purana, the name of Kalki incarnation, which is to take place in almost 400,000 years, is mentioned along with the name of his father and the name of his village in which he will appear. A sane man, therefore, of an incarnation without reference. Text 3. Along with 9 women, sisters, the Lord then appeared as the Kapila incarnation, being the son of the Prajapati Brahmana Kardama and his wife Devahuti. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'll read this again. Along with 9 women, sisters, the Lord then appeared as the Kapila incarnation, being the son of Prajapati, Brahmana, Kardama, and his wife, Devahuti. He spoke to his mother about self-realization, by which, in that very lifetime, she became fully cleansed of the mud of the material modes, and thereby achieved liberation. Foolish, unintelligent persons make their own interpretations by imagination and thus mislead their followers, causing them to remain in the dungeon of material existence. However, simply by following the instructions imparted by Lord Krishna or Lord Kapila, one can obtain the highest benefit, even today. The word Atmagatim is significant in the sense of perfect knowledge of the Supreme. One should not be satisfied simply by knowing the qualitative equality of the Lord and the living being. One should know the Lord as much as can be known by our limited knowledge. It is impossible for the Lord to be known perfectly as he is, even by such liberated persons as Shiva or Brahma. So what to speak of other demigods or men of in this world? Still, by following the principles of the great devotees and the instructions available in the scriptures, one can know to a considerable extent the features of the Lord. His Lordship Kapila, the incarnation of the Lord, instructed his mother and the pure devotees who are there also live in the same style as the Lord and his eternal associates. When the Lord descends personally by his personal plenary expansions, such incarnations are called Angsha, Kala, Guna, Yuga, and Manvantara incarnations. And when the Lord's associates descend by the order of the Lord, such incarnations are called Shaktyavesha incarnations. But in all cases, all the incarnations are supported by the invulnerable statements of the authorized scriptures, and not by any imagination. From the mundane conception of the supreme truth. The living entities, by their very constitution, are spiritually as good as the Lord. And the only difference between them is that the Lord is always supreme and pure, without contamination by the modes of material nature. Whereas the living entities are apt to be contaminated by association with the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. This contamination by the material modes can be washed off completely by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. Devotional service engaged. Hey, Eduardo, how nice to see you.
See you.
Who was that lovely lady you brought? Is a friend, wife, friend? She was wonderful. Very pure, very devotional. I hope she comes back.
Okay. So,
Please. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. This contamination by the material modes can be washed off completely by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. We're on chapter 7 of the second canto. Do you have it in your machine? Not yet. You do? Have the Veda base? Canto 2, chapter 7, verse 3. This contamination by the material modes can be washed off completely by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate issue, and therefore those who are directly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord not only acquire the necessary knowledge in spiritual science, but also attain detachment from material connection and are thus promoted to the kingdom of God by complete liberation, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogina sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Even in the non-liberated stage, a living entity can be directly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, or his plenary expansions like Rama and Narasingha. Thus, in proportion to the improvement of such transcendental devotional service, the devotee makes definite progress toward Brahmagatim or Atmagatim, and ultimately attains Kapilasya Gatim, or the abode of the Lord without difficulty. The antiseptic potency of devotional service to the Lord is so great that it can neutralize the material infection, even in the present life of a devotee. A devotee does not need to wait for his next birth for complete liberation. Text 4. The great sage Atri prayed for offspring, and the Lord, being satisfied with him, promised to incarnate as Atri's son. Dattatreya, Datta, the son of Atri, and by the grace of the lotus feet of the Lord, many Yadus, Haihayas, so on, became so purified that they obtained both material and spiritual blessings. Purport. Transcendental relations between the personality of Godhead and the living entities are eternally established in 5 different affectionate humors, which are known as Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The sage Atri was related with the Lord in the affectionate Vatsalya humor, and therefore, as a result of his devotional perfection, he was inclined to have the personality of Godhead as his son. The Lord accepted his prayer and he gave himself as the son of Atri. Such a relation of sonhood between the Lord and his pure devotees can be cited in many instances. And because the Lord is unlimited, he has an unlimited number of father devotees. Factually, the Lord is the father of all living entities. But out of transcendental affection and love between the Lord and his devotees, the Lord takes more pleasure in becoming the son of a devotee than in becoming one's father. The father actually serves the son, whereas the son only demands all sorts of services from the father. Therefore, a pure devotee who was always inclined to serve the Lord wants him as a son and not as the father. The Lord also accepts such service from the devotee, and thus the devotee becomes more than the Lord. The impersonalists desire to become one with the Supreme, but the devotee becomes more than the Lord, surpassing the desire of the great monist. Of course, he doesn't actually become more than the Lord, but the Lord allows him to think like that, and he acts like that for the pleasure of his devotee. Parents and other relatives of the Lord achieve all mystic opulences automatically because of their intimate relationship with the Lord. Such opulences include all details of material enjoyment with the Lord. Such opulences include all details of material enjoyment, salvation, and mystic powers. Therefore, the devotee of the Lord does not seek them separately, wasting his valuable time in life. The valuable time of one's life must therefore be fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Then, other desirable achievements are automatically gained. But even after obtaining such achievements, one should be on guard against the pitfall of offenses at the feet of the devotees. The vivid example is Haihaya, who achieved all perfection in devotional service, but because of his offense at the feet of a devotee, was killed by Lord Parashuram. The Lord became the son of the great sage Atri and became known as Dattatreya. Text 5. To create different planetary systems, this is Brahma still speaking to Narada. To create different planetary systems, I had to undergo austerities and penance, and the Lord, being pleased with me, incarnated as the 4 Sanas, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. In the previous creation, the spiritual truth was devastated, but the 4 Sanas explained it so nicely that the truth at once became clearly perceived by the sages. Purport. The Vishnu Sahasranama prayers mention the Lord's names as Sanat and Sanatana and Sanatanatma. The Lord and the living entities are both qualitatively Sanatana, or eternal, but the Lord is Sanatanatama, or eternal in the superlative degree. The living entities are positively Sanatana, but not superlatively, because the living entities are apt to fall to the atmosphere of non-eternity. Therefore, the living entities are quantitatively different from the superlative Sanatana, the Lord. The Lord is Son. The word Son is also used in the sense of charity. Therefore, when everything is given up in charity under the Lord, the Lord reciprocates by giving Himself unto the devotee. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeyatam mam prapadyante, tangs tataiva bhajamyaham. Brahmaji wanted to create the whole cosmic situation as it was in the previous millennium, and because in the last devastation, knowledge of the Absolute Truth was altogether erased from the universe, he desired that the same knowledge be renovated. Otherwise, there would be no meaning in the creation. In every millennium of creation, transcendental knowledge is a prime necessity if the ever-conditioned souls are to be given a chance for liberation. The mission of Brahmaji was fulfilled by the grace of the Lord when the four Sanas, namely Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, appeared as his four sons. These four Sanas were incarnations of the knowledge of the Supreme Lord, and as such, they explained transcendental knowledge so explicitly that all the sages could at once assimilate this knowledge without the least difficulty. By following in the footsteps of the four Kumaras, one can at once see the Supreme Personality of Godhead within himself. Text 6. To exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance, he appeared in twin forms as Narayana and Nara in the womb of Muti, the wife of Dharma and the daughter of Daksha. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like them were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. Purport. The Lord being the source of everything that be is the origin of all austerities and penances also. Great vows of austerity are undertaken by sages to achieve success in self-realization. Human life is meant for such tapasya, with the great vow of celibacy, or brahmacharya. In the rigid life of tapasya, there is no place for the association of women. And because human life is meant for tapasya, for self-realization, factual human civilization, as conceived by the system of Sanatana Dharma, or the school of 4 castes and 4 orders of life, prescribes rigid dissociation from woman in the 3 stages of life. In the order of gradual cultural development, one's life may be divided into 4 divisions: celibacy, household life, retirement, and renunciation. During the first stage of life, up to 25 years of age, a man may be trained as a brahmachari under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, just to understand that woman is the real binding force in material existence. If one wants to get freedom from the material bondage of conditional life, he must get free from the attraction for the form of woman. Woman, or the fair sex, is the enchanting principle for the living entities, and the male form, especially in the human being, is meant for self-realization. The whole world is moving under the spell of womanly attraction, and as soon as a man becomes united with a woman, he at once becomes a victim of material bondage under a tight knot. The desires for lording it over the material world under the intoxication of a false sense of lordship specifically begin just after the man's unification with a woman. The desires for acquiring a house, possessing land, having children, and becoming prominent in society, the affection for community and the place of birth, and the hankering for wealth, which all are like phantasmagorias or illusory dreams, encumber a human being, and he is thus impeded in his progress toward self-realization, the real aim of life. A brahmachari, or a boy from the age of 5 years, especially from the higher castes, namely from scholarly parents, the brahmanas, administrative parents, kshatriyas, or mercantile or productive parents, vaishyas, is trained until 25 years of age under the care of a bona fide guru or teacher. And under strict observance of discipline, he comes to understand the values of life. along with taking specific training for a livelihood. The brahmachari is then allowed to go home and enter householder life and get married to a suitable woman. But there are many brahmacharis who do not go home to become householders, but continue the life of Naishtika brahmacharis without any connection with women. They accept the order of sannyas, or the renounced order of life, knowing well that combination with a woman is an unnecessary burden that checks self-realization. Since sex desire is very strong at a certain stage of life, the Guru may allow the brahmachari to marry. This license is given to a brahmachari who is unable to continue the way of Naishtika brahmacharya, and such discriminations are possible for the bona fide spiritual master. A program of so-called family planning is needed. A householder who associates with a woman under scriptural restrictions after a thorough training in brahmacharya cannot be a householder like the cats and dogs. Such a householder after 50 years of age would retire from the association of women as a vanaprastha to be trained to live alone without the association of a woman. When the practice is complete, the same retired householder becomes a sannyasi, strictly separate from women, even from his married wife. From a study of the whole scheme of disassociation from women, it appears that a woman is a stumbling block for self-realization, and the Lord appeared as Narayana to teach the principle of womanly disassociation with the vow and life. The demigods, being envious of the austere life of the rigid brahmacharis, would try to cause them to break their vows by dispatching soldiers of Cupid. But in the case of the Lord, it became an unsuccessful attempt. When the celestial beauties saw that the Lord can produce innumerable such beauties by his mystic internal potency, and that there was consequently no need to be attracted by others externally. There is a common proverb that a confectioner is never attracted by sweetmeats. The confectioner, who is always manufacturing sweetmeats, has very little desire to eat them. Similarly, the Lord, by his pleasure potencies, can produce innumerable spiritual beauties and not be the least attracted by the false beauties of material creation. One who does not know alleges foolishly that Lord Krishna enjoyed women in his Rasa Leela in Vrindavan, or with his 16,000 married wives at Dwaraka. That's a big subject matter. We'll discuss this later. Text 7. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him, yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Purport. When Lord Shiva was engaged in severely austere meditation, Cupid, the demigod of lust, threw his arrow of sex desire. Lord Shiva, thus being angry at him, glanced at Cupid in great wrath, and at once the body of Cupid was annihilated. Although Lord Shiva was so powerful, he was unable to get free from the effects of such wrath. But in the behavior of Lord Vishnu, there is no incident of such wrath at any time. On the contrary, Bhrigu Muni tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest. But instead of being angry at Bhrigu Muni, the Lord begged his pardon, saying that Bhrigu Muni's foot might have been badly hurt because the Lord's chest is too hard. The Lord has the sign of Bhrigu Muni's foot, Bhrigupada, as a mark of tolerance. The Lord therefore is never affected by any kind of wrath. So how can there be any place for lust, which is less strong than wrath? When lust or desire is not fulfilled, there is the appearance of wrath. But in the absence of wrath, how can there be any place for lust? The Lord is known as Aptakama, or one who can fulfill his desires by himself. He does not require anyone's help to satisfy his desires. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited. All living entities but the Lord are limited in every respect. How then can the limited satisfy the desires of the unlimited? The conclusion is that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger, and even if there is sometimes a show of lust and anger in the absolute, by the absolute, it should be considered an absolute benediction. Text 8. Being insulted by the sharp words spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, although only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest. And the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages, both upward and downward. Purport. When he was only 5 years old, Prince Dhruva, a great devotee and son of Maharaj Uttanapad, was sitting on the lap of his father. His stepmother did not like the king's patting her stepson, so she dragged him out, saying that he could not claim to sit on the lap of the king because he was not born out of her womb. The little boy felt insulted by this act of his stepmother, nor did his father make any protest, for he was too attached to his second wife. After this incident, Prince Dhruva went to his own mother and complained. His real mother also could not take any step against this insulting behavior, and so she wept. The boy inquired from his mother how he could sit on the royal throne of his father, and the poor queen replied that only the Lord could help him. The boy inquired where the Lord could be seen, and the queen replied that it is said that the Lord is sometimes seen by great sages in the dense forest. The child prince decided to go into the forest to perform severe penances in order to achieve his objective. Prince Dhruva performed a stringent type of penance under the instruction of his spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni, who was specifically deputed for this purpose by the personality of Godhead. Prince Dhruva was initiated by Narada into chanting the hymn composed of 12 syllables, namely Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and Lord Vasudeva incarnated himself as Prishnigarbha, the personality of Godhead with 4 hands, and awarded the prince a specific planet above the 7 stars. Prince Dhruva, after achieving success in his undertakings, saw the Lord face to face, and he was satisfied that all his needs were fulfilled. The planet awarded to Prince Dhruva Maharaj is a fixed Vaikuntha planet, installed in the material atmosphere by the will of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva. This planet, although within the material world, will not be annihilated at the time of devastation, but will remain fixed in its place. And because it is a Vaikuntha planet, never to be annihilated, it is worshipped even by the denizens of the 7 stars situated below the Dhruva planet, as well as by the planets which are even above Dhruva planet. Maharshi Bhrigu's planet is situated above the Dhruva planet. So the Lord incarnated himself as Prishnigarbha just to satisfy a pure devotee of the Lord. And Prince Dhruva achieved this perfection simply by chanting the hymn mentioned above, after being initiated by another pure devotee, Narada. A serious personality can thus achieve the highest perfection of meeting the Lord and attain his objective simply by being guided by a pure devotee, who automatically approaches by dint of one's serious determination to meet the Lord by all means. The description of Prince Dhruva's activities can be read in detail in the 4th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Text 9. Maharaj Vena went astray from the path of righteousness, and the Brahmanas chastised him by the thunderbolt curse. By this King Vena was burnt with his good deeds and opulence, and was en route to hell. the Lord, by his causeless mercy, descended as his son by the name of Prithu, delivered the condemned King Vena from hell, and exploited the earth by drawing all kinds of crops as produce. Purport. According to the system of Varnashram Dharma, the pious and learned Brahmanas were the natural guardians of society. The Brahmanas, by their learned labor of love, would instruct the administrator, kings, how to rule the country in complete righteousness, and thus the process would go on as a perfect welfare state. The kings, or the Kshatriya administrators, would always consult a council of learned Brahmanas. They were never autocratic monarchs. Scriptures like the Manu Samhita and other authorized books of the great sages were guiding principles for ruling the subjects, and there was no need for less intelligent persons to manufacture a code of law in the name of democracy. The less intelligent mass of people have very little knowledge of their own welfare. As a child has very little knowledge of its future well-being. The experienced father guides the innocent child towards the path of progress, and the childlike mass of people needs similar guidance. The standard welfare codes are already there in the Manu Samhita and other Vedic literatures. The learned Brahmanas would advise the king in terms of those standard books of knowledge and with reference to the particular situation of time and place. Such Brahmanas were not paid servants of the king, and therefore they had the strength to dictate to the king on the principles of the scriptures. This system continued even up to the time of Maharaj Chandragupta, and the Brahmana Chanakya was his unpaid prime minister. Maharaj Vena did not adhere to this principle of ruling, and he disobeyed the learned Brahmanas. The broad-minded Brahmanas were not self-interested, but looked to the interest of complete welfare for all the subjects. They wanted to chastise King Vena for his misconduct, and so prayed to the Almighty Lord as well as cursed the king. Long life, obedience, good reputation, righteousness, prospects of being promoted to higher planets, and blessings of great personalities are all vanquished simply by disobedience to a great soul. One should strictly try to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. Maharaj Vena became a king, undoubtedly due to his past deeds of righteousness, but because he willfully neglected the great souls, he was punished by the loss of all the above-mentioned acquisitions. In the Vamana Purana, the history of Maharaj Vena and his degradation is fully described. When Maharaj Prithu heard about the hellish condition of his father Vena, who was suffering from leprosy in the family of Amlecha, he at once brought the former king to Kurukshetra for his purification and relieved him of all sufferings. Maharaj Prithu, the incarnation of God, descended by the prayer of the Brahmanas to rectify the disorders of the earth. He produced all kinds of crops, but at the same time he performed the duty of a son who delivers his father from hellish conditions. The word putra means one who delivers from hell, called put. That is a worthy son. Text 10. The Lord appeared as the son of Sudevi, the wife of King Nabi, and was known as Rishabhadev. He performed materialistic yoga to equibalance the mind. This stage is also accepted as the highest perfectional situation of liberation, wherein one is situated in oneself and is completely satisfied. Hare Krishna, Nitya, Haribol. Purport. Out of many types of mystic performances for self-realization, the process of Jada Yoga is also one accepted by authorities. This Jada Yoga involves practicing becoming like a dumb stone and not being affected by material reactions. Just as a stone is indifferent to all kinds of attacks and reattacks of external situations, similarly, one practices Jada Yoga by tolerating voluntary inflictions of pain upon the material body. Such yogis, out of many self-infliction methods, practice plucking out the hairs on their heads without shaving and without any instrumental help. But the real purpose of such Jada Yoga practice is to get free from all the material affection and to be completely situated in the self. At the last stage of his life, Emperor Rishabdev wandered like a dumb madman, unaffected by all kinds of bodily mistreatment. Seeing him like a madman wandering naked with long hair and a long beard, less intelligent children and men in the street used to spit on him and urinate on his body. He used to lie in his own stool and never move, but his stool was aromatic, like fragrant flowers. And a saintly person would recognize him as a Paramahansa, one of the highest state of human perfection, one in the highest state of human perfection. One who is not able to make his stool fragrant should not, however, imitate Emperor Rishabdev. The practice of Jada Yoga was possible for Rishabdev and others on the same level of perfection, but such an uncommon practice is impossible for an ordinary man. The real purpose of Jada Yoga, as mentioned here in this verse, is prashanta karana, or subduing the senses. The whole process of yoga, under whatever heading it may be, is to control the unbridled material senses and thus prepare oneself for self-realization. In this age specifically, this Jada Yoga, cannot be of any practical value. But on the other hand, the practice of Bhakti Yoga is feasible because it is just suitable for this age. The simple method of hearing from the right source, Srimad-Bhagavatam, write it down, make a note, will lead one to the highest perfectional stage of yoga. Everybody goes, yeah. Good thing I don't have to do those other things that they did in previous ages, right? Right? Rishabdev was the son of King Nabi and the grandson of King Agnidra, and he was the father of King Bharata, after whose name this planet Earth was called Bharatavarsha. Rishabdev's mother was also known as Meru Devi, although her name is mentioned here as Sudevi. It is sometimes proposed that Sudevi was another wife of King Nabi, but since King Rishabdev is mentioned elsewhere as the son of Meru Devi, it is clear that Meru Devi and Sudevi are the same person under different names. Text 11. The Lord appeared as the Hayagriva incarnation in a sacrifice performed by me, Brahma. He is the personified sacrifices, and the hue of his body is golden. He is the personified Vedas as well, and the supersoul of all demigods. When he breathed, all the sweet sounds of the Vedic hymns came out of his nostrils. Purport. The Vedic hymns are generally meant for sacrifices performed by fruitive workers who want to satisfy the demigods to achieve their fruitive result. But the Lord is the personified sacrifices and personified Vedic hymns. Therefore, one who is directly a devotee of the Lord is a person who has automatically both served the purposes of sacrifices and pleased the demigods. The devotees of the Lord may not perform any sacrifice or may not please the demigods as per Vedic injunctions, and still the devotees are on a higher level than the fruitive workers or the worshippers of different demigods. Text 12. We'll do one more verse. At the end of the millennium, Satyavrata, the future Vaivasvata Manu, would see that the Lord in the fish incarnation is the shelter of all kinds of living entities, up to those in the earthly planets. Because of my Brahma's fear of the vast water at the end of the millennium, the Vedas come out of my mouth, and the Lord enjoys those vast waters and protects the Vedas. Purport. During one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus, and at the end of each Manu, there's a devastation up to the earthly planets. And the vast water is fearful even to Brahma. So in the previous life of Vaivasvata Manu, such devastation would be seen by him. There would be many other incidents also, such as the killing of the famous Shankasura. This foretelling is by the past experience of Brahmaji, who knew that in the fearful, devastating scene, the Vedas would come out of his mouth, but that the Lord in his fish incarnation would save not only the Vedas, but also all living entities, namely the demigods, animals, men, and great sages. So we'll stop here, and we'll have reflection. Please, anybody. I'm sure there were a few things in this reading that people might have that's stuck in their minds, and they may want to discuss. Please.
Why are women the binding force in material existence?
Because, listening? Because you have a form that is the combined form of all of the attractive features of the material world. That is the human female. The human female form is the most attractive form in the material world.
Yeah.
So you got something to be proud of. But unfortunately, because the world is created in such a way that it requires expansion, it requires procreation, it requires civilization, it requires all these things. Why? We don't really need it, because we're not really men or women.
Yeah.
We're pure spirit soul. We don't really know what our identification is now in the spiritual world. We're forgetful. We don't know. But because of our desires, each one of us, each individual, we take a form that allows us to satisfy our previous desires to enjoy in this material world. And the way it's all set up is the male and the female are attracted to one another. You know, so this is a general statement. It's not meant to be misapplied in terms of devotional service. Because when a man or a woman becomes a pure devotee, then they transcend this nature.
Yeah.
And they no longer become, you know, the bane of anybody. I mean, we have Devahuti, we have Kunti Devi, we have the prayers of Kunti Devi in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which, by the way, are some of the most beautiful and profound prayers in the whole book. We have Draupadi, we have Gandhari, we have so many saintly women who set the standard for all living beings, not just women. So women are meant to be saintly also, but the way the whole material world is constructed is to fulfill the material desires of everyone. And that's the general principle. But when, like it was described before, you know, in the Vedic age, and it's no longer applicable, I mean, Prabhupada was a sannyasi.
Yeah.
It said here sannyasis are not allowed to see women, what to speak of have them come close.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to spread Krishna consciousness in this degraded age, when men and women are mixing freely, you know, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Not going to turn back the clock. So Prabhupada came And he taught the women how to wear their saris. You know? And all kinds of other things. And when he came back to India, where these so-called spiritual authorities were so strict and rigid in these principles, based on things that are in the Shastra from hundreds and millions and billions of years ago, he was able to follow the rules and teach us not to have sex and not to just flirt and associate, you know, without any rule, without any control, without any care for spiritual emancipation. Because when a man and woman get together and have unrestricted sex, it becomes so strong that they forget about self-realization. They forget about their spiritual principles. They forget about austerity. They forget about all these things. And so in this age we're living in, the modes of goodness in which men and women automatically followed these principles in the beginning. It wasn't such a big thing then. When it's talked about here, it wasn't a big thing. That's just the way people lived, because their goal in life was self-realization, not sense gratification. But as the ages become degraded more and more, the goal becomes sense gratification, and therefore, unfortunately for the women, they become the center of that energy. And now you'll see what's going to happen. The women are going to become stronger, and the men are going to become weaker. Huh?
There was this interview where Tesla was talking about how the women will advance and the men will
Yes. Why? Because the men are injecting their semen into the women unrestrictedly, whenever they want. The men's semen is power. It's energy. It's very powerful energy. It takes 40 to 60 drops of blood to make one drop of semen. So the women, they're collecting this semen and they're becoming stronger, and the men are losing their semen and becoming weaker. And now, just in this last cycle of political democracy, a record number of women are winning. And that's the way it's going to be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the men are going south for the winter. Or
that'll be the demise of men.
Or into the Himalayas. Trekking the Himalayas. What?
Do you feel that'll be the demise of men? Like, do you see that happening?
No, the men will never be demised, the women will never be demised, just that their roles change, that's all. That's all. But Lord Chaitanya came to give self-realization and more love of God to everyone without discrimination. And that's what this movement is.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't get scared away from these teachings in the Vedas. Don't let it scare you away. What it should do is make you a little bit more sober and realize that actually there's more to it than, the male-female thing and the perks and the comforts and the this and that and the other thing, in the place of birth and all these material things. Because the more attached you become to those things, then when it comes time to leave the body, you'll be like this. Not me, no, I'm not going to go. Not me, I'm not going to go. I'm not ready. Whereas a self-realized person, man or woman, and we have personal experience in this life of devotees in our movement, because I'm 70, I'm in the first generation after Prabhupada. And plenty of my godbrothers have left. Just the other day, one of my dear friends left, Gunagarai Maharaj, and he was surrounded by devotees, male and female, chanting to him and encouraging him. And he just, Hare Krishna, and went.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It was so beautiful, and it was actually in a video. You can see it. I don't know how you find it, but you can then maybe help her find it. Unbelievable. Because that's the goal of life. Yes.
Maharaj, you were talking about sexual attraction between the men and women. Is there anywhere in our scriptures mentioned the attraction between the same sex?
Yeah, there's mention of it, but it's generally not approved of. because it's not natural. But here's the reason, here's the answer, and Prabhupada gave us this answer. When we are in a man's body and we become too attached to a woman, we take a woman's body in our next life because we're always thinking of the woman. Similarly, the woman's always thinking of the man and will become woman in the next life. So we've been going back and forth between male and female for a very long time. And the memories of all of our previous acts and everything that comes into our senses in all the lives since we've been here are stored in our subtle body. Because the subtle body stays with us. It carries the soul from one gross body to another. So the memories and the perceptions and everything is in the subtle body. So when the soul has done that enough times, one lifetime comes out and he can't decide which one he is in the mind. That's why these children are actually thinking that they're man if they're woman and woman if they're man. And it's real. It's not some kind of disease that, deserves a conversion, system, something like that. It's real. But nobody understands why. Because there's no spiritual education. So, but it doesn't make any difference if you're a man or if you're a woman. If you indulge in sexual intercourse or sexual pleasure unrestrictedly, then that sensation, because there's a coating on the genitals of the man and the woman, and there's a coating, and it's a pleasure-giving substance that's so intensely pleasurable, and it's meant to encourage procreation so that the material world can go on and fulfill the desires of all the living beings. But if you indulge in it unrestrictedly, then you lose your spiritual focus, you lose your desire for self-realization and even knowledge of self-realization. And your desires become completely sensual, and the society, the whole society as a whole goes degraded more and more and more until at the end of the Kali Yuga, they're looking like animals, not just acting like animals, they're looking like animals. There's no more situations like this, where men and women are coming together and trying to understand spiritual principles and how to become self-realized and go back to Godhead. And it didn't mention it in the scriptures, but when the man takes sannyas, the woman becomes the saint of the family. Generally they go with the eldest children or back with the father's family, and they become the guides of the family. It's not that they just, go into a corner and knit and, no, they become saintly persons themselves and renunciates. But they don't travel around and do like men can do. I mean, we have to be honest to discuss this subject. It's very difficult to discuss it neutrally, because there's so much pressure in the material society to go one direction or another.
So after listening to you, it makes actually much more sense. So as a Bhakti Yoga practitioner, we should be actually more open-minded and accepting of the LGBTQ community, right?
Yes, but whether you're a man or a woman or a gay or a whatever, they have so many names now. What are you? I'm flexible, or I'm, what are they have?
Queer.
What is it? Queer, no, binary, and all kinds of new names now. Anyway, I don't know about them, but every once in a while I see something in a news site. What was that? What's in your wallet? Yeah. What's in your wallet? I don't know. Let's go to the hospital and change it, But the fact of the matter is that whether, say for instance, a couple is monogamous, thanks. A couple is magnanimous and they're chaste to one another and this and that. But if they engage in sex, it doesn't make any difference what kind it is. The same sensations will make one more attached to the body and more attached to sensual things and the needs and comforts of the body and opulence and all those things and comforts, and they'll forget about their spiritual life. So we can be open-minded, but it doesn't. They have to follow the principles just like we do. If they do, they can live together and have a temple and and don't have sex and have companionship or whatever it is they get from one another, and then they can become pure devotees and go back to Godhead. But the problem is that persons in that area are so sensitive. If you want to interfere with their sex life, whoa, you're touching a hot potato. You're touching you're getting your hand too close to the fire. So therefore, whether they will or not, whether we open our doors and whatever or not, there have to be principles, and they have to live by the same principles as the rest of us. When I was in Fiji preaching, there was a group of people who were misled by Sai Baba and a couple of other groups, following so-called spiritual authorities in India that were actually off the wall. And they demanded that they can come and touch the deity in our temple. So I just happened to be the sannyasi there, the kind of like the authority. So they all came to me and said, we want to go and touch the body of the deity. It is our right. And I said, yes, you can. And I said, oh, we can? Yes, anybody can. Everybody can. But you have to do this, 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 and this first. Everybody. Not just you, anybody. And they backed off. I can't do that. No, I can't follow that. No, I can't do it. And they just kind of withered away. And that's the fact. Therefore, don't expect that the Krishna consciousness movement will be attractive to everyone or even most people. This is for serious persons. And it will gradually spread, but not by making compromises. It's gradually spreading. And what's going on here with young people coming, how many new people have come here just in the last 2 or 3 weeks? It's like, it's mind-boggling, thank you. As they say in England, I'm gobsmacked. Gobsmacked, yeah, it's an English word. It means I'm mind-boggled. So it's not discriminatory, but everybody has to follow the laws of nature. And these are the laws of nature. And they'll come to the point where they'll say, well, what's wrong with becoming a dog in my next life? And Prabhupada will say, it's a little risky, don't you think? A little risky. They say it, but if I was to say to them, all right, you become a dog right now. No, I don't want to become a dog. It's too risky. Okay, that's it. I'm getting the evil eye from the Sergeant of Arms. See, we got lady Sergeant at Arms. We don't discriminate, Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone in cyberspace, for the wonderful reading and the wonderful questions and the wonderful hearts and ears. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.